Okay, I'm going to call to order the regular board meeting of Saugatuck Township Board for Wednesday, August 1st, 2018. Let records show that all board members are present, along with Manager Sheridan. And please stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let's move on to the agenda. I would like to add to item 8, number A, the Township's medical marijuana response. I'd like to amend new business item A to include appointments to the IFC Board of Appeals. And I'd like to add to new business item D, approval of the fireworks permit.
What was the first item, Christian?
The medical marijuana response under unfinished business A. Does anyone else have any other additions, changes?
No.
If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt this agenda as modified.
I move we approve the agenda as amended.
Support that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Let's move on to public comments, starting with the first row. Does anybody have any public comments? Do these people walking in have a public comment? Okay, let's move on to invoices. Accounts payable invoices to be paid.
I've got one question. Item, it's on page, I can't read the page number. 120, it's page 4. Second from the bottom, it looks like it just needs to be reworded. It says the June gas, Township Hall, gas and electric, and it's Cal Lake. Being paid to Cal Lake, so.
Oh, it's, yeah, water sewer.
Can't correct that. That's the only question I had. Oh, I did have a question. Page 6, mowing the field, Douglas Cemetery. We have a contract with GMS. I assume this is outside of that contract?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the field behind the cemetery,
It's not
which
part
is
of
outside. Yeah, it's a
I
one-time a
figured.
year thing that they usually do.
I thought that would be the answer. Thank you.
I have a question. Are we self-insured for vision? Okay. Dental also or just vision?
Yeah, well, it's the same amount of money,
Okay.
but it's applicable
It's
for
applicable.
both,
Okay.
only if they spend it. So if they don't spend it, then we save that money.
Good. Okay. So do I have a motion to approve the invoices?
What's the,
I mean, a motion to approve the invoice in the amount of
13, I move we approve the, well, you can, 13,247.44.
I'll second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Next, we'll move on to payroll, right?
That's just for informational.
Okay, so we're all
checks, so
we're
it's
done
up to minutes.
minutes. Approve of the minutes from July 11th.
Support.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Correspondence, we have a letter from Phyllis. This basically is stating that our current person is still interested in serving.
Right.
And we've advertised for new.
Yep.
This appointment needs to be made probably to the next meeting.
At the next meeting, we'll do it.
Okay. But basically, the Judith Snyder is still interested in serving.
Yep.
So we have 2 total.
Right.
Staggered.
I think both want to serve, if I understand correctly. Okay.
I just thought it was interesting what the nice support that Phyllis had for Judith. Sounds like she's done a nice job.
Okay, let's move on to unfinished business, which I added item A. I just wanted to close the loop on what we discussed in our last board meeting when we said we should get back with a response on the medical marijuana issue. And I think the bottom line is based on the letter we received from Steve. The Planning Commission met, they opted to wait to address this issue until, for a couple things. One, for the other governments to address the issue, which I think was wise, as well as to see how it would be affected by the state ballot proposal that will be on in November. And this is a similar stance that Lake Township has taken. And I think from a financial standpoint, to go through the cost of legal review and to draw up an ordinance which may change immediately is just not a good business decision.
Right.
So I think I would agree with what we've done here. And as it turns out, Douglas has opened the door for a provider in Douglas, which is just as close to Saugatuck Township as anywhere else.
Clear, not me, the village enough.
Yes, yes, yes.
Not me.
So, okay, I just wanted to just clarify that since we said we would do that. Let's move on to new business. The IFC Board of Appeals, you've got some language change that needs to be adopted. So let's start with that. And with just a simple change, if I recall.
Yeah, this has been through, it's been presented, excuse me, to the board prior, several months ago. And the board approved the wordage in a motion, and then it came around again, because the city of Douglas, I believe, called out a change in the wordage to allow elected officials to be on the board of review because of both of their appointed positions were elected from their elected body to the administrative board of the fire district. So it says Steve has said to in the memo to provide another layer of relief to an applicant, maybe to assist the IFC administrators for the township fire district, to assist them in their interpretation of a project. So the board this board would appoint one permanent member to the IFC Board of Review and one alternate. And it is a requirement that they would be from the pool on the administrative board for the fire district. So our only 2 reps are Chris and Eric.
Wow, it's going to be a tough decision.
So your choices are very narrow, I guess you would say. So I guess the only real choice, if you want to proceed with the ordinance, is to decide who will be your permanent or rep, who will be the alternate.
I did talk to Eric, and he's interested in serving as the permanent, as he should. He's got the most tenure on the board. But I'd like to just make this statement for you all. Just so, I interpret this Board of Appeals as being a regular Joe like us, sitting in front of a regular Joe and listening to their case because of a decision based on the fire chief or the fire official. Right. To make the common sense, gray area type decisions that need to be made in those instances to allow the chief to hold to his not wanting to make any exceptions stance, but also to be fair to people who have maybe a good case for looking at alternatives. So I just want to make sure that that's my interpretation, unless anybody has a different one. That's just how our ZBA is. They're not to be experts. They're to be regular people like us that represent us.
That's how I see it too, yeah.
And I think that describes Eric pretty well, so I think he'll do a very good job for us. So with that, I will move that we adopt the, we'll do 2 motions here. The first will be to adopt the ordinance as amended. but specifically this ordinance to amend the Saugatuck Township IFC to provide for a fire board of appeals.
I'll support that.
Any discussion?
We will need a roll call.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
item 1082, limitations on authority. The last sentence is the board shall have no authority to waive requirements of this code. It sounds to me like it's opening up the door for a couple of attorneys to just argue about what that really means. In one case, it says that if the code's been incorrectly interpreted, the provision of the code do not fully apply, or an equivalent method of protection or safety is proposed. Then it says the board has no authority to waive requirements of this code. I don't know. To me, it's totally at odds with the previous statement. And I'm sorry I didn't catch it earlier, but it popped out at me today. The board shall have no authority to waive requirements of this code. And the code is IFC as modified by the township. It's defined in the beginning. I don't know if I hadn't looked back, if it was in the old one or not, but
You know, that's a good question, and that doesn't make it, why would we have a board of appeals that has no authority? It really is,
you got a hand raising in the audience
it's not
here.
tomorrow. So, how do we want to address this? I think we send this back to Steve, clarify for us, because we don't want to adopt it with bad language.
Cindy?
Well,
I don't
you
know
might
if you wanna
have another legal
What's
opinion,
it-
as
Cindy
Cindy has
has-
access to legal too on the same exact ordinance.
Let's just see what Cindy's got to
Yeah.
say on this, so
Yeah.
we have
Sure.
a clear understanding. Thank you.
Sure, I've been on boards of appeals for many years, and quite often there is a misinterpretation that the board can clarify, and it allows you to make alternate approvals, so alternate safety measures. That's the big part that you'll be using
Yeah.
in the interpretations. You really don't waive any requirements, you just change it to another avenue.
That's a good point. So we're not going to change the code, is what you just said,
Right.
and I think that's true. But if someone came and said, I don't want to hook up to water because it's too costly, can I dig a pond? The board should have the authority to say the
Exactly.
pond is
That's
acceptable
the alternate.
as an alternate.
Yep.
So that's the kind of thing. So that might answer your question. Does that take catch me?
The next point, 1083, it just seems overkill. The Board of Appeals shall consist of members who are qualified by experience and training to pass on matters pertaining to hazards of fire, explosions, hazardous conditions, and fire protection systems. Now, I know,
In a perfect world,
Yeah.
in a perfect
we
world,
don't have,
There's a lot of opinions.
and the IFC is such a broad guideline.
Can I speak to that as well? The original IFC contains an entire chapter on the Board of Appeals. And it talks about you have to have one mechanical engineer, one fire specialist, one architect, and we just can't get that here. So that's why they amended it to say parties that have experience. And it works much better than trying to find a fire safety engineer.
I guess the argument is, what is experience? Yeah. It sounds to me
Well,
like
at
you've
this
gone
point,
to classes or...
Everyday life
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, and at this point, we're also constraining it to those who serve on the current fire administration board, so they'll have some knowledge
Yes,
of
I
fire
agree on that.
practices and procedures. So, yeah, let's be honest, we have never used this board before, so this is a first. This is the first actually established. I don't know if we ever had a board of appeals. I think it exists, but it's never been staffed, so, or used. So, does that answer all the questions? Any more discussion?
Yes, thanks, Cindy.
So I'll look for a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Who wants to?
I would move to adopt the ordinance. Go to second.
Second?
Discussion, we have to publish this in 30 days after publication date, it goes in force, is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, those were two, and I read it a number of times in the first draft too. Those two parts were definitely the ones
Yep.
that could be interpreted sideways from the different amendments and the change that Douglas made about the qualifications of being elected
Right.
or appointed.
Right.
And
You know,
my understanding is that Saugatuck and Douglas have approved this
That
language.
is,
well,
well,
in some capacity, I mean,
Yeah.
they haven't approved it yet. I don't believe they've adopted it yet. But it went through a period of review already through Saugatuck and I believe, and then Douglas and then the fire board, and they came back with these
it was
changes.
just a minor change if I recall.
Yeah, I mean, the substance is pretty much the same, is you're setting up an appeal body for the local project to go through, and they are going to review a lot of details and probably have a couple legal packets in front of them to decide if they're going to modify, deny any suggested changes to what the original report came out for the applicant or the project. So
I think the only thing lacking here now is the scheduled fees. It would probably be reasonable.
yeah, there's a rules of procedures that I think they need to get adopted. They need to get, just your administrative type stuff organized and agreed to. But I would suggest a fee, it's the township's fee, again, it would be added to the township's resolution or consolidated fee schedule. But I think there should be a recommendation coming from the fire department to establish the same type of fee, a uniform fee that can cover maybe the per diem costs, if there is going to be a per diem salary or a per diem amount paid to the board members, it should cover that. I don't believe there's a publication requirement for it, besides just your Open and Meetings Act. But your fee should cover, the added services of the fire district to hold the meeting or any other types of fees.
So I'm going to ask you as an action item to go ahead and establish those fees so I can recommend them to the Fire Administration Board.
Yeah, what do they want to do as far as, I saw online there was a number of them around the country. The range was wide. Do you want to maybe ask the fire board and see, or ask Greg and Chris and see what they recommend a range? And I can draft a resolution for the board to review it. And
Well, who is going to impose the fees? The Fire Board or the government body? Who's going to impose
well,
those
the
fees?
fee has to be adopted by this body
Right.
on our fee schedule.
Then we should go ahead with that process, and then we'll
Yeah.
ask the fire district leadership how they want to address that.
I saw a fee from $25 to $200.
I don't think it should be egregious. It should be something that's
Well, I can,
reasonable.
I'll talk to Steve and we can talk to the partners and the board and
Yeah.
see, and I'll put something together.
Okay, great. So, any further discussion? Let's do a roll call.
Rudick, yes. Slavinsky?
Yes.
Lane?
Yes.
Rohrig?
Yes.
McElwain?
No.
Motion carried. Okay, next is the Blue Star Trail Memo of Understanding.
We have a speaker here too. Jeannie Van Zoren is here. She drove here to kind of give her input about this. This has to deal with our North Connection Trail project, or our grant for our North Connection non-motorized trail project to the DNR Michigan Trust Fund grant application.
It's not working again.
Turn it off and then on.
There it goes.
Okay.
Done?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
You can bend that down, Jeannie. It's shorter than
Okay,
this whole thing.
everybody hear me? Okay. And I just have a few comments to make. Number one, I want to clarify that there are three parties in this memo of understanding: the City of Douglas, Lake Township, and Saugatuck Township. Neither Lake Township or the City of Douglas is in any way officially connected with the Blue Star Trail.
the Lake Township was well under its way before we even organized the Friends of the Blue Star Trail. And the same with the city of Douglas. That's a streetscape program that they initiated back in 2007, and it included trailways and what have you. But the city of Douglas will be part of the Blue Star Trail. So we check in with them from time to time, and vice versa. And however, with this memo of understanding, in reading the ways in which you can add points to your score for both the Department of Transportation TAP grant and for the DNR Trust Fund grant, I suggested to Aaron that they consider developing a joint maintenance program. And remember that Saugatuck Township, right at the very beginning of our contractual relations, said that they had been maintaining the trail up to this point so that they would continue to maintain it. But on the other hand, we do have an endowment fund set up for maintenance that we have initiated last year with the Allegan County Community Foundation. So the purpose of this document is certainly to save as much money as possible by working jointly with the three of them, and also at this point show that there's a significant level of cooperation among the three government entities. And the city of Saugatuck has the option of going in with this at some time, certainly, or asking us to do it because we do have the maintenance fund. Allegan County has elected to use our maintenance fund in the agreement that we reached with them last fall. So that's basically it. I want to thank Aaron for doing another excellent job on this document. I gave him a skeleton outline of what we needed, and he filled in the outline very well and worked with the other two managers. And we're expecting to have approval from both the Lake Town Board and the Douglas Board within the next couple of days. Any questions?
So I noticed that there's a lot of language around cooperation and shared resources. I see no boundaries as far as financial. That's probably purposeful, and that's okay, but
Right.
I mean, where is that addressed?
Okay, there's a cost-benefit analysis that Aaron did as an addendum
Okay.
to demonstrate the value of the document from fiscal.
But the bottom line, this gets this score so we get the type of grants that we want to continue.
Yes, I understand the TAP grant and the DNR Trust Fund grant are extraordinarily competitive. There are 2,000 miles of trailway grant applications all around the state, so it's very, very competitive. So the more we can demonstrate connectivity, the more we can demonstrate cooperation among the local entities with these kinds of agreements, the better off we are.
Yeah, and the beauty of the Village of Douglas is they actually have a staff, so they have resources they can address to. We contract out, we've got that covered. Lake Town probably does the same, so. And it has not been excessive as far as cost so far. Great.
Okay?
Thanks, Gene.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
So, we need to have a motion to authorize on behalf of Saugatuck Township this memo of understanding.
I would move we approve the memo of understanding regarding the Blue Star Trail between Township, Lake Town Township, and the city of the Village of Douglas.
Have a second?
I'll support.
Discussion.
I can talk a little bit about it, Chris. Yeah, like what Jeannie said too, and they asked for these. You know, it's hard to save a ton of money on our individual maintenance of our trails, just because, you know, in my opinion, I think we run a streamlined maintenance program now. We subcontract out here at the townships to Lake Town. The focus of this is really to put an emphasis on trying to work together with a private contractor. And the city of Douglas does at times use a private contractor, of course, outside of their DPW work, like for construction, asphalt repair, bridge span repair, large tree removals and things like that, is we would have a pre-agreement in place to attempt, to the best of our ability, try to collaborate on when we do RFPs and things to work together, maybe to mobilize the same contractor on the same day as opposed to different days in the week. And that contractor who we use now is the same contractor between us and Lake Town. Like, just say if we did our trail maintenance on the same day of the week alone, he's like, well, that alone would save me an estimate now, just for the sake of planning, so it's like 10% is my mobilization cost and talking to managers and things about scheduling.
Have you had any discussion with the Village of Douglas about some type of reimbursement to utilize their DPW for certain parts of our trail?
Yeah, I mean, we went through a round of resolutions, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago with Jeannie, when we did a resolution of shared maintenance.
Okay.
And that's what this is based on, you know, coming from that past, and then we have a new application, and, you know, but we didn't have anything formal as far as an MOU yet. We
Right.
had our resolution directing the managers to work together, and there was a couple of letters exchanged, but the idea is that this would open the door for maybe a legal agreement down the road.
Right.
If there is a niche, a competitive niche, it would be hard for the DPW, I think, to be a private contractor for a small job, but if a Douglas maybe wants to explore that option, it's got to be a thing where they can really be competitive at, more so than a private contractor, like for their snow plowing, you know, for their sweeping. If they're already doing the link, it isn't built yet, but say there is the link from the Wiley Road past the brewery down to the exit there.
Right.
Well, can't we work out a way for them to just keep going?
Right, that's my
And then we
point.
don't have to call Glenn to get on the south side of the Kalamazoo, where Glenn's operation's on the north side of the Kalamazoo. So when that trail's built, this would already kind of be in place to prepare for that agreement to be drafted if they were willing to do that. There would be another agreement kind of based on this, because it would involve the share of equipment outside of their boundary, and these are legal agreements and stuff, so. But it's conceivable that that would save, you know, time if they're already doing it. But they would have to identify where they're competitive, I think, from a public standpoint to be private. Us in Lake Town, as I said, we already have the same contractor. So my cost benefit analysis was primarily that 10%, which that contractor said, hey, if you get this in place and it's understood that we do this on the same day, he said conservatively 10% off your bottom line. Now, if that means more work for less or the same amount of money, but his costs could conceivably be 10% less. You know, and how do we get that to trickle down to the taxpayer? Well, it's either more service, maybe another mile, you know, paid on a contract or something, or, you know, a rebate or something, money off at the end of the season or something, but it would help our contractor, and then we just have to concentrate on how that can help the taxpayer, but that's what this cooperation is the first step of, is on the paper. So.
Any other questions on this before we vote on it? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Do you want a roll call vote on this?
If you want to, maybe you might want to put in the motion, who do you want to sign it? Maybe just have Chris sign it as
I mean,
the
we all-
supervisor, or?
If we all vote in the affirmative, I mean, that's a roll call
Right.
vote to me.
I don't. It's okay. I think it matters for the state. So I'll sign it, and I'll send a copy to Douglas and Lake Town. Hopefully they'll sign it too. Thanks.
Okay, next on the agenda is meeting time. We've tried this 7 o'clock for the summer, and we said we revisit it. The one thing I'd like to bring up with respect to meeting time is as we get into the winter, fall, and winter months, we're losing daylight. You know, travel to and from with daylight as much as possible could be beneficial. And I'd like to see us go back for the winter months, back to our original 6 o'clock time. That's just my opinion. I'm glad to bring it up. In fact, I'll bring it up as a motion to starting in our September meeting, going back to our original 6 o'clock time, and then revisit that again as the summer months come up. Do I have a second?
A second?
Discussion.
Could we ask, we have a few audience members, we don't have a lot, could we ask any, have any strong opinions one way or the other from a public standpoint?
How many would like it to be at 6 o'clock versus 7? Raise your hand. How many would like it at 6 o'clock instead of 7? How many at 7 o'clock instead of 6? How many don't give a damn? Okay, so there we go.
I came to this meeting with, hey, whatever floats. I mean, you know.
Can compromise the chicks.
How about 6:30?
Yeah. I think let's stay at 6, that's what it has historically been. And if we want the summer months, go back to 7, there's plenty of daylight. But I know that one of the concerns about later starts in the winter is
Yeah.
daylight and driving. So,
Um,
any other discussion?
To clarify, you said starting in September, you want to go back to
The September meeting would start at 6 o'clock. Anybody else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same, motion carried. Next on the agenda is fireworks permit. I want to say something here. This was a dialogue between Chief Janik and Steve Cushion to get this accepted, and this is how I think it's supposed to work. These guys got along, they talked to each other, they were open, considerate, and got something done. And I want to commend both for doing this. This is good work and how it should work. So we have before us a permit that needed approval from the fire department before Steve can approve it. And the chief reviewed it, met with the folks, everything is acceptable, has agreed to it, and we have to now approve this permit. It's for 3208 Fox Ridge Court in Saugatuck. It'll be on September 15th.
I'll move we approve the fireworks display permit at Fox Ridge Court.
I'll second. In discussion.
Did the Lambs weigh in on this? Is there any opinion from that?
I don't know how that works.
I only ask if it's right there.
Yeah,
Who's that?
the Lambs. The Lambs and Ramses are close.
They probably asked me.
I would definitely have
Yeah.
Steve talk to them and make sure that they are contacted.
So, if someone wants to grant the motion,
I would amend my motion
Amend
to
it.
add that.
yeah, I would do that. Make sure Steve contacts both the Lambs and the Ramses to make sure they're aware of it.
Yeah, I think Lisa Smith is on Fox Ridge as well.
So they should know. That would be the courteous thing to do.
I'm sure they do. I just
Yeah.
want to make sure.
Any further discussion?
Yeah.
Motion's been amended?
Just a question, are they the only two that are on Fox Ridge? There's 3
No.
homes at the end of this.
Lisa Smith, I think.
Pardon?
Lisa Smith lives there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What about, her opinion, knowing about this?
We could provide a copy of the permit to all of them in the mail, and then have Steve.
Just make sure they know that the person doing this is Captain Boom.
Yeah, professional.
They are, but
Yeah.
it's going to be noisy, so. Okay. But everything's in place. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. We'll move on to committee reports. Planning Commission.
You want to do the appointment for IFC?
Oh, we didn't do that, did we?
You put it on as item B.
Yeah. We'll make that item E. Sorry, guys. I move to appoint Eric Beckman as the, what do we call it?
Would be the
Permanent
member of the International Fire Code Board of Review for Saugatuck Township.
and myself as the alternate.
Motion.
second that.
I need a second.
Second.
Discussion? Questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. Thank you for bringing that up. Now we move on to committee reports. Planning.
We have Andrew Preetz now as the chair, Maggie as the vice chair, Crystal Donald still the secretary. We approved a new restaurant in the Rowan Black building, a smaller building to the north. And we had a preview of a site plan for a Big B in the Spectators parking lot, a little tiny Big B.
Where was that done?
It's in this, going to be in the Spectators parking lot to the south, I guess, east, west? No.
Southwest
South.
corner.
Yeah,
To build a,
a little tiny Big B.
Coffee.
Coffee.
Like a miniature coffee shop. Kind of where the
Like a
truck
drive-thru,
sign
it's
is.
a drive-thru, yeah.
We need
Can't
more
have
coffee,
enough
right?
coffee.
Who doesn't?
I gotta at least have 6 cups in the morning.
And that's it.
Okay, road committee?
Yeah, right.
well,
Sorry.
I know Aaron has been trying to find out when we're gonna get the chip seal work done, and the counties were on the list. Sometime, no date was set.
The only other thing I want to bring up is that there's been some internal discussion that hasn't propagated throughout the whole board yet, but will eventually, about looking at the potential for some traffic control on the Blue Star. Specifically a couple of what are considered hazardous intersections, 65th Street, Old Elgin Road. We've engaged Craig Atwood. He wants to sit down and talk. There's a number of ways to achieve that type of traffic control and safety modifications. But Aaron has brought to my attention, and a good point, that there is a potential for input from the city of Saugatuck, the Friends of the Blue Star Trail, in these discussions. And I think it's a good time to have it. And hopefully we'll have some type of path forward to discuss as a board going forward at a future meeting. But I think it's a good idea to look at this.
I know that up at the Blue Star Gym, that has been brought up before a year or so ago. And I don't, it kind of fell into the ether. So
Yeah.
Well, it was brought up before, and the road commission did talk about it,
Did
but they said they weren't gonna do any studies until there was development on that other corner. So if the development was the same, they weren't, as was, they weren't gonna do anything.
Yeah. But there was I don't remember the numbers, but there were a number of accidents at that particular intersection. I don't know how that related to other intersections, but it seemed to some concern. So I'm glad to hear we might start that process again.
Well, there's a couple of drivers for this. One is that safety issue. The other is the Blue Star Trail and what we're going to do about that, getting through Saugatuck. I think it's a good time to have this discussion. And once we get a path forward and get this framed, start to invite other stakeholders like the city and the Friends and those.
I'm not sure what makes it so dangerous, but you see so many times a car almost coming out on Old Allegan.
Oh, yeah.
When you're coming along there, either going north or south. I don't think it's a visibility thing, but it seems to happen a lot.
The stop sign on Old Allegan, when you're coming like from Fenville, you're coming to the stop sign. The stop sign is way back before the road. You stop, but then you have to inch your way forward
Right.
before you turn onto the Blue Star.
Yeah.
And that, you might, I've seen it. One reason I paid so much attention is my dad had an accident right at that corner,
Right.
and that's what happened. He stopped, he looked, and then he went forward. When he went forward, that's when he
Sure.
got hit.
Well, and I got to give you, it's not that easy to just start putting traffic control in, because you get
Right.
backups and all kinds of issues. So there's studies that have to happen. Well, the ultimate authority on this is the road commission. We have no authority as a township for our roads. We can fund road improvements, but that's totally under the jurisdiction of the county road commission. But I'm glad they're interested in.
I'm glad
Having a
you
discussion.
mentioned that tonight.
So, anything else on roads? If not, interurban?
Yeah, instead of the one bus, we're getting 2 new buses through MDOT. And then our new hours on Sundays from 4 to 7 are averaging about 40 riders per Sunday, and that was for the month of June.
I did as a follow-up to something that Aaron brought up with Fenville and Phyllis had talked about. I contacted Tom Pantalleri, the mayor of Fenville, who's a personal friend. He connected me with Jim Hayden, who's on their board, and they would like to talk about how that could happen. I said he should contact Phyllis, which he was going to do. So,
Yeah, she was gonna try to initiate a study, or a rider study.
yeah. I think it's a good time to look at it. There's a lot of synergy between, especially during the high season, between our communities. And it makes a lot of sense. Anything else on the fire board? The interim
No,
bid?
I'm good. No, that's
Fire board, we did have a meeting, and during that meeting, a review was done on the chief, and after that, the chair of the administration board moved to basically give him a raise to what was originally proposed, and it was passed. So that has happened, and as I've explained to some of you who had questions, I was uncomfortable as a fire administration board member leaving this open-ended compensation situation where someone could get per call compensation in addition to a salary. That's basically untethered. You could double his salary. So I felt better about giving him the raise, making sure, and the review warranted it. He had a good review. And then capping that at that. So it's my interpretation he will no longer try to get call compensation, but I'll police that as an administration person. Any other comments on that? Questions? Parks Commission?
Yeah, Jim, do you want to say anything since you're here? I mean, you're the chair, or you want me to monologue?
We had a quiet meeting last month. If you've got some things, go ahead. I don't have any.
Well, the culvert thing by the replacement bridge, there's a walking bridge. It's the first walking bridge, just a pedestrian bridge in a park. Maybe
where we at on
15
that?
feet long. Dana's, Prada Newhoff, Dana and his, he has a landscape engineer who's expert in parks, is gonna give us a rough sketch, contact the DEQ and see what would be required about putting in a culvert and then earthwork on top and tearing out that old bridge, that first one that's starting to rot. The main beam on the side is broken half. It's got about an inch gap. The pylons, I think, are from the 70s, I think, and they're rotted. One's kicked in half. There are 2 footbridges at the Riverbluff Park, and this is the first one. The idea is when the trail comes down, there's a culvert there that goes underneath the highway, and it drains down to the marsh. Is to remove or keep the bridge there during construction, put about a 30-foot black plastic culvert tube, a high-density plastic in there, and just go even it off so you come down that hill and then go straight across instead of bending to the right and going over this kind of jankety bridge. You would just come down the hill and go straight across. Earth, a low slope on either sides, grow in and look nice, but it would be up to ADA standards. So then it would fall in line with the overall park plan that was developed last year. The goal in that, and Jim can speak on this too, is to somehow get that park's advantage is the riverfront and the boardwalk and the dock access. But the challenge with that park is that kind of the jewel of that park is a mile through the woods in a very narrow non-ADA trail. So in order to qualify for grant funds to improve that dock and do a boardwalk and do some kind of a landing there, water, the boat launch is just, you can see the Schultz Park boat launch through the pylons of the bridge. It's right there. You need to be able to connect the parking lot area, ADA, to the boardwalk. And that's where we ran into trouble with our passport grant. Is that it's so long, it's expensive. and it's up hills, elevation's hard, it goes up the sand dune, down and around. So the idea is to, one, address the bridge now. It's a problem now. It's starting the rods falling apart. But then to do it in a way that is consistent with this overall vision of eventually trying to improve that corridor, essentially from the parking lot area and the swing set to where the best part of that park is on the water there. It's a unique view of the Kalamazoo Marsh. It's our only view of the townships of that part of the marsh on that side of the bridge. If you get a chance to go walk it, it's an incredible walk. There's huge trees, and there's a tulip tree that's about this wide. You know, it's a unique area, but it's so underdeveloped and unknown. You know, it's hard to get the grants on the coastal because you don't have ADA access to it. So that's the overall
This
vision.
land bridge seems to be more sustainable than something that could rot in 20 years, so
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
cheaper than well, the estimate is, you don't know until you know, until you get your plan done, is it's actually cheaper to do a culvert and then do
Yeah.
land around it than trying to do a wooden bridge would be nice.
Right.
You know, comparable costs, but a little bit more. But it
And
would.
The other thing
plus
is
the
the
tree.
DEQ should allow us to do this.
Under a tenth of an acre is what our engineer is saying is the goal, but there's other considerations too, where the earth is coming from, you know, the type of materials. He's got to get this plan done. He just started a few days ago. And then when he gets that, then, you know, the Parks Commission can take a look at it, I can review it, and then we'll see what costs are, estimates and things. But it's a worthwhile project, and it keeps it consistent too with that overall, vision, that the Parks Commission came up with, is to get that park slowly. It's a big park, so this is a long-term plan to connect those two parts of it. The front part, public access part, the
Right.
swing set,
Right.
and of course the best part is down by the coast there, the river.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful park. It's help. Did that cover it?
Yeah, we also met with Dave Eiley, we're trying to get
Oh, yeah.
somebody with the Boy Scouts to,
Eagle
Great
Scout
idea.
project. yeah.
Great idea.
we did that, we went for a walk.
Awesome. Okay, open board report. The only thing I'll bring up is, and I should have brought it up in fire board, is I did ask again for the spreadsheet of conflicts that have arisen from the passage of the IFC modifications in our zoning ordinance. It's still not ready yet. They're working on it. My concern is going to be some list of things that could happen. I don't want to see that. I want to see a list of things that have happened and have to be addressed. We don't need to relitigate all this, through a spreadsheet that's been populated with what could happen. What I want to know is, has anything happened since that was adopted? And I committed to the public and to you, as a board member on the fire board, to monitor that and bring it to our attention if there are things that have to be addressed. So I still don't have that yet. As soon as I have it, that'll be reviewed as part of this. And anything that comes up will be brought up as part of the fire board committee report. Anything? Public comments? Anybody? This meeting stands adjourned.